You're walking home late at night, minding your own business, when flashing red and blue lights stop you in your tracks. A cop steps out, his eyes cold, his hand resting on his belt. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't explain. He just assumes you don't belong. Now imagine if the person he stopped wasn't just anyone. What if she was a highly trained CIA operative? What if she had the skills to take down an entire empire? And what if this night, the moment the cop decided to pull her over, was the beginning of something much, much bigger? This is the story of Alex Carter, a woman who refused to back down, a woman who would expose a secret so powerful that the entire system would come after her. Atlanta, Georgia, a city of bright lights and dark corners. Even in the dead of night, the streets hum with life, cars rushing down highways, distant sirens echoing in the air. But in this part of town, things are different. The streets are too quiet. The street lights flicker. The silence feels heavy. Alex walks steadily, her leather jacket zipped up, her hands deep in her pockets, her backpack slung over one shoulder. To anyone watching, she looks like just another person heading home. But she can already feel it, that invisible weight of suspicion pressing down on her. She's used to blending in. She's walked through enemy territories, past armed guards, through war zones where one wrong move meant death. And yet right now, on a quiet street in the country she calls home, she feels the same danger creeping up her spine. The houses around her stand tall, their white pillars and fancy driveways showing off old money. Security cameras blink from the rooftops, watching her every move. This is not a neighborhood for people like her, not at this hour. A low rumble of an engine makes her slow her steps. She doesn't need to turn around to know what's happening. A patrol car rolls up beside her, smooth and slow, the headlights washing over her. She hears the click of the radio. A man shifts inside. Then the red and blue lights flicker on. "Mum, stop right there." Alex takes a deep breath, her heartbeat steady. She turns around slowly, already knowing what's coming. But what the officer doesn't know is who he's just stopped. Alex stood still as the red and blue lights flashed behind her, painting the quiet street in uneasy colors. The police cruiser idled at the curb, its engine humming softly, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. A voice cut through the night. "Ma'am, stop right there." Alex turned slowly, her face unreadable. She had been trained for moments like this. Stay calm, stay in control, read your opponent before they read you. The officer leaned against the open door of his cruiser, his posture too relaxed. Ryan Brooks. His name was stitched onto his badge. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished. But there was something in his stance, something in the way his fingers hovered near his holstered gun, that told her this wasn't just a routine stop. This was something else. "Evening, officer," she said, her tone even, controlled. Brooks smirked, a slow, lazy grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Mind telling me what you're doing out here?" Meyer already knew what he meant. He wasn't asking where she was going. He was asking why someone like her was walking through a neighborhood like this, at this hour, wearing that jacket, carrying that backpack. She kept her expression neutral. Walking. Brooks tilted his head, pretending to think about it. Yeah, not a lot of people walk around here this late. There it was, the unspoken accusation, the subtle, quiet message behind his words. "You don't belong here. Explain yourself." Meyer had spent years dealing with men like him, not just in uniforms, but in suits, in war zones, behind desks where they pulled strings without ever getting their hands dirty. Men who believed power meant ownership. But she was not some lost kid who had wandered into the wrong part of town. "I live in Atlanta," she said, her voice steady. "Heading home." Brooks let out a short chuckle, shaking his head. "That right?" His fingers tapped against his belt. "You got ID to prove that." Alex and Brooks slowly, already knowing where this was headed. With deliberate, careful movements, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her driver's license. She held it up, but she didn't hand it over. Brooks barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "And where exactly do you live?" Meyer met his gaze, unmoving. He wasn't looking for answers. He was looking for submission. She lowered her arm. "Officer, have I done something wrong?" Brooks' smirk twitched. "You tell me," he said, voice thick with amusement. "Middle of the night. walking in a neighborhood where people don't usually walk. That's enough reason for me to ask a few questions." Myers' patience thinned. So walking is a crime now. His fingers flexed over his belt. The movement was small, almost casual, but Myers saw it for what it was. A warning, a test. How much would she push? How quickly would she back down? She had been trained to read people, to see the shift in body language, the flicker of something dangerous in their eyes. And right now she saw exactly what Brooks was waiting for. This wasn't about the law. This was about control. The street was quiet. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. A car passed by, slowing just slightly before speeding up again. Nobody stopped. Nobody intervened. Alex had walked through war zones, sat across from men who would slit her throat without hesitation. And yet standing here in her own country on a quiet street, she felt the same electric tension creeping up her spine. She had seen too many stories like this. It always started the same way. A cop who didn't like being questioned, a civilian who didn't back down fast enough, and then a tragedy. But not tonight. Alex kept her voice calm, controlled. "Officer, if I'm not being detained, I'd like to be on my way." A quiet moment stretched between them. Then Brooks laughed. Not a real laugh, a dry, humorless chuckle that sent a ripple of unease through the air. "Lady," he said, reaching for his baton, "I don't think you understand how this works." The cold, unmistakable scrape of metal against leather filled the silence. Myers' muscles tensed as she watched him pull the baton from his belt, tapping it once against his palm. She had seen this before. She knew exactly what was coming next. What Brooks didn't know was who he was dealing with. The night air was still, but tension thickened like a brewing storm. Myers' eyes flicked to Brooks's baton, her instincts sharpening. He wanted a reaction. He wanted her to flinch. He wanted an excuse. She gave him nothing. "You think you can just walk away?" Brooks's voice was slow, taunting. Alex Brooks through her nose, her fingers flexing slightly at her sides. She had survived ambushes, betrayals, shootouts. Yet standing here, on a quiet street in the city she once called home, she felt something deeper gnawing at her, the weight of a rigged game. Her instincts told her to fight. Her logic told her to wait. Brooks moved first. The punch came fast and vicious, aimed straight at her face. But he was sloppy, too eager, too emotional. Alex sidestepped at the last second, feeling the heat of his knuckles graze the air where her jaw had been. Brooks stumbled slightly, thrown off by his own momentum. Alex had a choice. One move, just one, could put him on the ground permanently. A strike to the throat, a calculated break to his wrist, a knee to the ribs, hard enough to crack bone. She could end this. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped back, her face unreadable. She could see the shift in Brooks's eyes, the way his smirk wavered, just slightly before his face darkened with something uglier. He had expected her to cower. She hadn't, and that made him furious. Brooks adjusted his stance, rolling his shoulders. "You got some nerve," he growled, his smirk disappearing. He reached for his baton. "Let's see how tough you really are." The first strike came at an angle, a diagonal slash aimed at her ribs. Alex twisted, the movement smooth, controlled, just enough to let the baton slice through empty space. Brooks adjusted quickly, bringing it down in a second arc, this time toward her shoulder. Alex's arm shot up, blocking the blow with the side of her forearm. The impact sent a sharp sting up her arm, but she didn't flinch. Brooks grinned. He was enjoying this. She could see it in his eyes, the thrill, the rush, the belief that he still had the upper hand. She had seen this before. Men like him had done this before and gotten away with it. That thought sent a slow, simmering anger through her chest. Brooks struck again. This time she moved differently, faster, more deliberate. Her left hand shot out, catching his wrist mid-swing. In one sharp, precise twist, she pivoted her body, using his own force against him. The momentum shifted instantly. Brooks was suddenly off balance, his grip weakening. The baton clattered onto the pavement. Meyer released him, stepping back as he staggered, blinking in disbelief. For a second there was nothing but the sound of their breathing, heavy in the night air. Then Brooks laughed, a deep, amused chuckle low and full of something sinister. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, shaking his head, as if she had just done something entertaining. "Oh, he ex-Brooksed. You have no idea what you just did, lady." Alex didn't react, but her instinct screamed at her. Something was wrong. This should have been over. Any other cop, any man with sense, would be furious, would be humiliated. But Brooks wasn't angry. He was satisfied. And then she heard it. A siren, low at first, but growing louder. Alex's pulse quickened too fast. This wasn't backup being called after an unexpected altercation. They had already been on their way. Brooks tilted his head slightly, his smirk returning, lazy and triumphant. "You really thought this was just some random stop?" he tisked, stepping toward her, lowering his voice as the second patrol car's headlights swept the pavement. "Nah, sweetheart, this was always going to happen." Myers' jaw clenched. This wasn't about her walking in the wrong neighborhood. It wasn't about suspicion or procedure. This was a setup. The other patrol car screeched to a stop. Floodlights snapped on, blinding her for a split second. 2 doors swung open, more officers, more guns, more hands reaching for holsters. She had just walked straight into a trap, and then a voice called out, "You good?" Alex turned her head, blinking against the harsh light. Standing across the street, partially hidden in the shadows, was a man, a camera phone in his hand, recording everything. Alex's gaze locked onto the man behind the phone, tall, lean, dressed casually, jeans, dark hoodie. But his grip on the phone was steady, focused, not just a random bystander. There was an intensity in his expression, something too calculated to be accidental. The moment their eyes met, he hesitated, just for a second. Then he stepped forward. "You good?" he asked again, louder this time. Alex didn't answer. She wasn't sure if she was. Brooks's smirk didn't fade. He wasn't worried. Number. He knew something she didn't. And then, the man with the phone's expression changed. His gaze sharpened, like he was seeing her for the first time. His brows furrowed. Then he muttered almost to himself, "I've seen you before." Myers' jaw tensed. The man took a slow step closer, lowering his voice. "That was military precision," he said, almost in awe. His eyes locked onto hers. "You weren't just defending yourself. You were calculating, controlled." His head tilted slightly. "Who the hell are you?" Alex didn't move. She should lie. She should walk away. But something about this moment, about the way Brooks was still smiling despite being on the ground, the way the sirens weren't slowing down, told her the rules had changed. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a slim leather wallet, flipped it open. The CIA badge gleamed under the street light. The man with the phone ex-Brooks sharply. His eyes widened. "No way." Alex snapped the wallet shut. "You didn't see that." But Ethan Reyes, the journalist who had just caught everything on video, just let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, no, pretty sure I just did." The moment Alex heard the click of the handcuffs, she knew something was off. She had been arrested before, on paper at least. In her line of work, getting caught was part of the game. But this wasn't normal procedure. The officers weren't talking, no Miranda rights, no radio calls confirming her booking, just silent efficiency as they shoved her into the back of the squad car. Alex ex-Brooksed slowly, keeping her breathing even. She had been in plenty of dangerous situations before. But this wasn't some foreign war zone. This was home. And somehow it felt worse. The squad car pulled away, the flashing lights bouncing off the quiet houses of the neighborhood. Ethan Reyes, the journalist, was still there, his camera rolling. His lips moved, saying something to the officers, probably asking questions. But no one answered him. They ignored him completely. That's when Alex knew. This wasn't an arrest, it was a transport. And not to a police station, somewhere else. She shifted slightly, testing the cuffs behind her back. Too tight, no give. The driver, a stocky older man with gray hair, stayed quiet, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. His partner in the passenger seat, a younger officer, nervous, fidgeting with his vest, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Alex caught his gaze. He looked away too quickly. She and Brooks deeply, filing that detail away. He was unsure. He wasn't completely in on whatever this was, which meant she had a chance. She let her head rest against the cool window, watching the city lights flash past. Then she noticed the route. They weren't heading downtown. They weren't heading toward the precinct. They were heading west, out of the city. Her pulse ticked up. The younger officer shifted in his seat. He muttered something to the driver. Alex caught it. Langley said no mistakes this time. Her fingers tightened in the cuffs. Langley. The name meant nothing to her. But the way he said it, the careful way he whispered it like it carried weight, told her everything. Someone big was involved, bigger than Brooks, bigger than a crooked cop with a power complex. The driver grunted. I don't get paid to ask questions. Orders are orders. Alex's jaw tightened. This wasn't about a routine stop gone bad. This was planned, and she was being taken somewhere she wasn't meant to come back from. Alex Brooksed slowly. She had minutes, maybe less, before they reached wherever they were taking her. The road ahead curved sharply, a perfect opportunity. She subtly adjusted her weight, pressing her feet against the floorboard. The driver took the turn a little too fast, and in that instant Alex exploded into motion. She kicked the door with everything she had. The sudden force blew it open, the hinges screaming in protest. The driver yelped, the wheel jerking wildly. The car skidded sideways, tires screeching against the asphalt. Alex launched herself out of the moving vehicle, twisting midair to minimize impact. The pavement rushed up to meet her. She tucked her body, rolling with the momentum. Pain shot through her shoulders, her knees scraping against rough concrete. But she kept moving. Behind her, the squad car swerved violently, nearly flipping before skidding to a halt. She had seconds, maybe less. She's out. The younger cop's panicked voice cut through the night. Alex pushed herself to her feet, already running. Her legs burned. Her ribs ached, but she didn't stop. A gunshot cracked through the air. She ducked low, weaving into the alleyways between warehouses. The darkness swallowed her whole. She ran, her pulse pounding in her ears, every muscle in her body screaming for relief. But she couldn't stop. If they caught her, she wouldn't be going to jail. She reached a chain-link fence, her momentum barely slowing as she jumped, gripping the metal with raw, bleeding hands. She swung her body over, landing hard on the other side. Another gunshot rang out. She vanished into the shadows, and then silence. No footsteps, no sirens, just the distant sound of the city, oblivious to what had just happened. She was gone. For now. Miles away, Ethan Reyes sat in his dimly lit apartment, his laptop screen casting a cold glow across his face. He had watched the footage over and over again, the way Alex moved, the precision of her takedown. It wasn't normal, it was military level. But what really caught his attention, not just her, the black SUV parked near the scene, the man standing beside it, watching. Ethan almost missed it at first. But now he zoomed in, enhancing the image frame by frame. And then he saw the face. A face that shouldn't have been there. His hands hovered over the keyboard, his breath slow and measured. He ran the image through facial recognition software. Processing. Match found. The name flashed across the screen. Victor Langley. Ethan's stomach dropped. Deputy Commissioner Victor Langley. A man too powerful to be anywhere near a random traffic stop. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. This is bigger than I thought. Alex stumbled into an abandoned storefront, her body screaming in pain. Blood dripped from her shoulder, her wrists raw from the cuffs. She needed a plan. She needed an ally. She pulled out a burner phone, dialing a number she hoped wasn't compromised. The call rang twice. Then Ethan answered. Alex, his voice was hushed, tense. Alex Brooks. I need your help. Ethan hesitated. Before he could answer, the line went dead. Alex stared at the screen. Someone had cut the connection. Her stomach twisted. They were already coming for him. And if she didn't act fast, he'd be next. Alex stood in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, pressing a cold compress against her bruised ribs. Her body ached, but her mind was racing. Ethan was in danger, and Victor Langley wasn't working alone. Her burner phone buzzed. Ethan's voice came through, breathless. Alex, I found something. This goes way beyond Langley. She already knew that. She had felt it in Brooks' smug grin, in the way they didn't take her to the station, but somewhere far worse. She Brooksed. Tell me. Ethan's voice lowered. Langley isn't just covering up dirty cops. He's the fixer for something bigger. Alex clenched her jaw. Ethan continued. I traced his offshore accounts. They all link back to a single shell company, Northgate Security. That name sent a cold prick down her spine. Northgate wasn't just a security firm. It was a black ops contractor, a private army for hire, the kind of place where people disappeared without a trace. Ethan's voice turned grim. And the money funding them? Alex didn't say anything. She already knew what was coming. It leads back to Senator Thomas Whitaker. She closed her eyes. A sitting U.S. senator. This wasn't just police corruption. This was systemic. This was government-level treason. She gripped the phone tighter. Ethan, we need hard proof. Something undeniable. Ethan hesitated. I think I know where to find it. Northgate Security Headquarters. 2 a.m. The glass and steel fortress stood at the edge of the city, wrapped in high-tech surveillance and armed guards. Alex and Ethan crouched in the shadows of an alley behind the building, watching the patrol patterns. Ethan adjusted his backpack. I still can't believe we're doing this. Alex pulled out a modified USB drive, checking the encryption code. We're not breaking in, she said. We're exposing them. Ethan exbrooxed. Right, because that sounds safer. Alex smirked. Stay close. She tapped into a security panel, bypassing the lock. The door beeped softly, and they slipped inside. The air inside was cold, humming with the quiet murmur of servers and security cameras. Ethan checked his watch. We have 10 minutes before their next patrol round. They moved fast, up a flight of stairs, through a side corridor, past locked offices filled with secrets. Finally they reached it. The server room. Alex pulled out the USB drive, inserting it into the system. Lines of encrypted files flashed across the screen. Ethan scanned the folders. Here. Drug shipments, bribes, election interference. Holy hell, this is everything. Alex's eyes narrowed as she found the jackpot, a file labeled Red Vultures. She clicked it open. It wasn't just evidence. It was proof that Whitaker and Langley had been orchestrating the entire system, controlling law enforcement, drug operations, and even political assassinations. Ethan's voice was tight. We take this to the right people. Alex shook her head. Number, we take this to Langley. Ethan stared at her. You want to warn him? Alex smirked. I want him to know I'm coming. The secure line connected on the third ring. Langley's voice came through the speaker, smooth, controlled. Well, Alex Carter. She didn't waste time. You've been busy. A small chuckle. You have no idea. She sent the first file. A pause. Then Langley's voice lost its amusement. You don't know who you're playing with. Alex's tone was ice cold. I know exactly who I'm playing with. Silence. Then a slow X-Brooks. You're making a mistake, Carter. I own this city. Alex smiled. Not for long. She sent one last image, a ledger detailing Whitaker's direct connection to Northgate. But the first time Langley said nothing. Alex tilted her head. Cat got your tongue. His voice came back, low and seething. You should have stayed in the shadows. Alex ended the call. Ethan X-Brooksed. That was either the dumbest or the smartest thing I've ever seen. Alex's eyes burned with cold certainty. We'll find out soon. Hours later, Ethan's phone rang. His contact at the news station. Ethan answered. Miller. A ragged breath at the news station. Ethan answered. Miller? A ragged breath on the other end. Ethan, you're not going to believe this. A crash. A gunshot. Then silence. Ethan's blood ran cold. Maya's jaw tightened. They're tying up loose ends. Ethan closed his eyes, cursing. Miller's dead, isn't he? Alex didn't answer. She didn't have to. Ethan let out a shaky breath. What now? Alex met his gaze, her voice quiet but deadly. We're out of time. She checked a magazine on her pistol. We take them down. Now. Ethan swallowed. That's a death sentence. Alex locked eyes with him. Then we don't miss. Alex and Ethan barely had time to breathe before the whole country turned against them. The news alert hit every major channel. Breaking news. CIA operative Alex Carter wanted for espionage. The broadcast showed her face, her name, and a bold headline. Armed and extremely dangerous. National threat at large. Ethan's breath hitched. They flipped the script. Alex's jaw tightened. Langley is faster than I thought. On the TV screen, standing behind a federal podium, was Victor Langley, calm, smiling, lying. This betrayal of trust within our intelligence community is both shocking and unacceptable, he said, voice smooth, practiced. Alex Carter has put lives at risk, and we will not rest until she is brought to justice. Ethan slammed his fist onto the table. That son of a... Alex wasn't even listening. She was watching Langley's face, the careful mask of professionalism, the subtle smirk he couldn't quite hide. This wasn't just a framed job. This was him letting her know he had already won. Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked down. A single text message. Unknown number. You had your chance. Now you're the enemy. A sudden burst of sirens outside made them both snap to attention. Ethan peeked through the blinds. His voice dropped. Alex. They're here. Alex grabbed her duffel bag, her weapons, her laptop, everything they needed to survive. Ethan hesitated. What do we do? Alex turned, voice calm but ice cold. We finish this now. Ethan exbruxed, heart racing. Alex checked her weapon, locked eyes with him. No more hiding. Ethan nodded. No more hiding. The sky was thick with the hum of helicopters. The red and blue flashes of emergency lights danced across the concrete walls. Alex crouched behind a stack of crates, pistol firm in her grip. Ethan was right beside her, his breathing heavy but controlled. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before Langley's hit squad breached the yard. The entire country was hunting them, and yet somehow Langley had come himself. Ethan peeked through the crack of a boarded-up window. His voice dropped. Meyer, he's here. Meyer turned. Langley? Ethan nodded. SUV, black bulletproof. Whole squad with him. Meyer's pulse ticked up. This was it. The moment everything burned down. She reloaded her gun, taking a slow breath. They're not taking us alive. Ethan swallowed. Was afraid you'd say that. Then, the first battering ram hit the front door. The FBI agent stormed in, weapons raised, shouting commands. But by the time they cleared the first room, Alex and Ethan were gone. They sprinted through the narrow alley, their footsteps drowned out by sirens. A police car screeched into the intersection ahead. Spotlights illuminated the alley walls. Stop. Hands where I can see them. Alex didn't break stride. She yanked Ethan hard to the right, dragging him toward a chain-link fence. Ethan realized what she was about to do. Oh, hell no. Alex leaped first, gripping the rusted metal, vaulting over. Ethan cursed, then followed. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets pinged against steel beams. They hit the ground running. Ahead. The train yard. Alex heard the low rumble of a freight engine. A moving train. Their only way out. She turned to Ethan. We jump. Ethan paled. We what? They ran. The train picked up speed. Alex grabbed the edge of a ladder, her muscles burning as she pulled herself up. Ethan followed, panting, shaking his head. This is insane. Alex climbed onto the roof, her balance steady. Ethan struggled behind her. I am not built for this. And then a helicopter floodlight snapped onto them. Ethan winced. They see us. Alex turned, gun raised, and there, standing on the opposite train car, was Victor Langley, gun in hand, smiling. Carter, he called out, voice carrying over the wind. You really think you're walking away from this? Meyer's jaw clenched. I'm not walking. I'm running right over you. Langley chuckled, shaking his head. You're in over your head. Meyer's grip on her gun tightened. Maybe, but I can still put a bullet in yours. Gunfire exploded. Alex dodged, rolling to the side as bullets ripped through metal. Ethan yelled, barely ducking in time. Langley's hit squad moved in from the train cars behind him. Alex fired first. One shot. 2. 3. Men dropped. But Langley? He wasn't running. He was waiting. He wanted her to come to him. And Alex. She was done waiting. She charged. Langley raised his gun. But she was already there. A brutal right hook snapped his head back. He stumbled, blinking in shock. Then he laughed. You hit harder than I thought. Alex didn't waste words. She hit him again. And this time he didn't laugh. Langley staggered, blood dripping from his mouth. He looked around. His men. Dead. His power? Gone. Alex stood over him, gun raised. Langley wiped his mouth, grinning through bloody teeth. You can kill me, Carter, but you know how this works. Meyer didn't move. Then tell me. Langley chuckled. Cut off one head, another grows. Meyer exbrooksed. Then I'll keep cutting. She fired. One shot. Langley collapsed. Dead. The news exploded. Deputy Commissioner Victor Langley, killed in firefight. CIA operative Alex Carter, still at large. Who really runs the system? The government tried to bury it, but the truth was already out. The country was awake now. Ethan sat across from Alex in a safe house, watching the news. Ethan shook his head. People are already twisting the story. Alex wasn't surprised. They always do. Ethan leaned forward. So what now? Alex pulled a burner phone from her pocket. It had one message. Unknown number. Langley was just a pawn. The real power is still watching you. Alex exbrooksed slowly. She looked at Ethan. We're not done. Ethan smirked. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Alex zipped up her jacket, stepping into the night. Alex zipped up her jacket, stepping into the night. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.